Hello everyone, my name is Melderon and welcome to the ClassicWoW.live Gear Tool Basics video. In this video, I'll be showing you how the tool works and how you can use it to track your character's progress and plan your next upgrades. If you find any bugs or have a suggestion, reach out to us on our Discord. A link to the Discord will be in the video's description on YouTube. Let's get started. At the top, you'll see a combination of options to define your character. Select your race, class, spec, level, and the phase of the game you want to look at. Depending on what you select, different gear will be shown. Gear is filtered by the selections you make here. All items such as class items are filtered by faction, class, and level, so you can only see items your character can actually equip and use. Once you have your character defined, you can start looking at and selecting gear. Click on the item slot and you will see a list of items show up in the table below. This is where you can see gear options listed by the item's value, set from a default stat weighting. These default weights can be customized, and we will go over that process later in the video. For tanking specs, the tool shows 3 columns for points, rather than simply one value column. There's tank, threat, and value. Tank is points for things like armor, dodge, and defense. Threat is points for things like strength, crit, and hit, while value is simply adding the values of tank and threat together. You can see to the right of value multiple columns with stats shown. The stats are grouped generally by role, but you can look at any group whenever you want. Click the Stats tab to change what stats you want to see. You can do this in the Attributes or the Items table. Now, in your Character Gear panel, when you select an item, it will be added to the Character panel in the Value Comparison in the table. This makes it easy to see the stat differences of the selected item compared to others. If you want to filter the type of gear, it is easy. At the top of the gear table are filters for rarity, source, any type. You can also directly search for an item if you know its name by typing in the search box. In the gear list, you will see items with random enchants listed. These items can have lots of options depending on what it is. The option with the most points is always the one shown. If you want to see every enchant as a comparison, just click the plus button to expand the list. Click any of the minus buttons to collapse down to a single best option again. There are 2 common buffs that add a % value to base stats: Blessing of Kings and Spirit of Zandalar, ZG World buff. These buffs often change the rankings of items depending on if you have the buff or not. If you can click on them, the value of items is recalculated. You will see many items change value and some change ranking positions due to these options being checked. All of the columns in the item table are able to be sorted. This can help find specific stats that are preferable, like hit or resist. Once you have selected your items, you can enter enchant mode to apply your enchants. When in enchant mode, the character pane will be highlighted and selecting slots will choose enchants. Simply select the enchant you want for it to be applied. After all items have been enchanted, leave the enchant mode by clicking the button and the character pane will unhighlight. It is easy to share your character gear set with other people. The URL captures your character settings. To share, you can click on the Copy Share Link button or simply copy-paste your URL from your browser. When someone clicks the URL, it will load your whole gear set. We've gone over a lot of the basics of what the gear tool can do, so now we will look at more advanced ways to use this tool to help you optimize your gear. Let's start with a common basic question. How can we find hit items? When building a set, it's important to be as close to hit cap as possible. First, make sure you have the melee stat tab selected so you can see the hit column. Click on the slot that you want to see items and then click on the hit column to sort by hit. You can now see, for instance, all of the gloves that add hit. From here you can compare the values of the gloves to try to get the ones with the highest value and with hit. You can see that Devil Sword Gauntlets doesn't show up at the top of this list because the hit comes from a set bonus. Set bonuses are calculated by the tool. Unfortunately, they aren't sortable by the individual items. But if you equip both items, the set bonus does show up appropriately. Let's look at another example. You're preparing to gear for a queue and you need as good of a nature resist set as possible, but you also want to try to maximize and optimize your DPS. It is easy to find nature resist gear with this tool. Since we are looking for gear that we want when starting a queue, we will start with setting the phase to 4, 1 before a queue. Now click on the Resist Stats tab. Here we can sort by resist and see how much each gives. You can now click on the Nature Resist column so you can see everything that has nature resistance. By default, all resists are worth 0 points, so let's change that to make nature resist have some value. Click on the Adjust Weight button. This window will seem a little daunting at first, but don't worry. You can break it because there's always the Reset Weights button at the bottom. Click that and it goes back to default. These weights dictate how the points in your value are calculated. Let's make it so that each point in nature resist is worth 1 value point. Find nature resist and put in 1. Now hit the Calculate Weights button and the window will close. The gear will automatically change value and you will see items that have nature resist have now risen higher on the list. Stone Bar Gauntlets are now a top 10 choice. If you go to feet, you will see the albino croc scale boots are higher as well. You can use this same technique for any of the stats in the game. Let's look more in depth at the Adjust Weights window. Like the attributes, the weights window is broken down by stat type to help you find what you care about. If you move your mouse around to different stats, you will see mouse over text to help explain each stat. Some stats are colored yellow. These are dependent stats. What that means is that you can't change them directly because they are calculated from other stats. You can see what drives this calculation when you mouse over it. Here, with agility, you can see that it gets its value from the value of crit, dodge, and armor. Let's change the value of crit and see what happens. All of the stats work with the formulas for how stats are calculated for each class and also the presumed standard talents that modify these stats. For example, Holy Paladins gain 10% intellect with Divine Intellect. You can also change the presumed fight length with the fight duration field. This can help adjust values of HP 5 and MP 5 compared to their fixed value stats. The default weights might give you a good general idea of the value of gear, but if you want a better list that you find more accurate, you can make custom weight sets yourself. Let's say you want a PvP set. You want high health and crit value and lower hit, since hit and skill are rating stats really. What would a gear list look like then? Let's try it out. Start with a fresh weight set by resetting. First, let's lower the value of hit and weapon skill. Now let's increase the value of stamina. Wait, that field is yellow. It's because it's calculated from health. Okay, so if we go to the health, let's add a value to it. Most basic stat points are valued at 1 as default. Since there's 10 health per stamina, let's make health worth 0.1. This will make stamina and agility almost equal value. Last, let's bump up the value of crit a little. Okay, now we have our PvP value set. Let's look at the results. Hit Calculate Weights. Now that stamina is worth points, we can see that epic PvP gear is very often near or at the top of the list. You can have a lot of fun trying to find the right stat balance, and I'm sure you'd like to share them, and you can. Go back to the Adjust Weights section. You can share your custom weights as a string. Click on the Generate Key button in the lower left. The string will be copied to your clipboard and you can share it with anyone. If you want to try someone else's weights, then copy the string and paste it into the window. Click Apply Weights and the weights will be set. Then click Calculate Weights and the gear will be shown with these new weightings in place. The last features of the tool are for tanks. Tanks have extra columns they can look at for value. As mentioned in the basics, there is the tank, threat, and value columns. Value is simply tank and threat added together. The question of what you should look at as a tank really is a personal one. It depends on what role you have and what's important for your raid group. Threat might be more important for some and survival for others. Use these columns to your advantage. Value generally gives a balanced tanking set. If you want to use these columns to your advantage, here are some tips and tricks. Let's say you want a really good threat set. You can go through the gear slots one by one and sort by threat. The highest threat items will be on top, but you'll find that some have good tanking stats too. You can scroll down and look for high threat items with strong tank values as well. Threat gear, like this for example, would be great for threat, without sacrificing as much survivability. If you want to focus on any specific stat like armor or stamina or hit again, you can sort by these columns and then compare values. You can also customize the stat weights completely for tanks as well. Just clicking on the Adjust Weights button will allow you to see them. You'll see that for tank specs there are 2 tabs in the window. Tank and threat weights are both customizable. Shared strings will share both sets of weights. There's a lot to play with, and we are still working on adding features to the tool. If you find things that could be improved or errors in how stat weights are calculated, reach out to us and let us know. We hope that this will help in your gearing and upgrade choices. Thanks for watching, and enjoy using our tool.